Time now for French Connections, our weekly look at the intricacies of life here in France. This week, we're going to focus on the French equivalent of the Oscars and a controversial award that has caused a lot of divisions in the elite world of French cinema and French society in general. Thank you so much for being with us, Flo.
That's right, Sanam. The 45th annual ceremony for Les César Awards was tense, to say the least. Now, even before the event kicked off, there were demonstrations in front of the Salle Pleyel where the ceremony was held. Now, fired-up feminist groups were protesting against the fact that a film by the Franco-Polish director Roman Polanski called J'accuse in French, An Officer and a Spy in English, so this is about the Dreyfus Affair. Well, this film had been nominated for 12 César Awards. Now, Polanski, who decided to skip the ceremony, is a very controversial and divisive figure because he's been wanted in the United States for the statutory rape of a 13-year-old girl since the 1970s. He's since faced other accusations of sexual assault, accusations that he's denied. But here's the thing. He is also celebrated by many people as a great film director who throughout his career has won very prestigious awards, including the Palme d'Or in Cannes and the Oscar for Best Director.
And that's the thing. He did end up winning 3 awards, not just one, including the very much sought-after prize for the Best Director. And this was a very bitter pill for many people to swallow, wasn't it, Flo?
It certainly was. Now, let's talk about how this vote happened, because you must keep in mind that these awards, these César Awards, are attributed following a secret and democratic vote by the over 4,300 members of the Académie des Césars. So these are people who work in the film industry, actors, directors, but also a lot of technicians. That being said, the Academy has been criticized for being a little bit out of touch with French society and dominated by older men. In fact, only 35% of the members are women. Now, immediately after the announcement that Polanski had won this prestigious prize, this actress, Adèle Haenel, she stormed out of the room shouting, "Shame," and she was followed by others as well. Now, she has become the poster child for the Me Too movement in France after accusing another director of sexually harassing her for years as a preteen. Now, the image of her storming out of the ceremony, we'll be able to see it in a sec, that certainly will go down in history, in the history of French cinema. You can see it was widely shared on social media. Now, even the master of ceremony, Florence Foresti, she refused to come back on stage to end the ceremony. And actors, meanwhile, were a little bit divided as to what they thought about the whole thing.
I love Roman Polanski, so I'm very happy for him. I can understand that not everyone agrees, but that's freedom.
I'm not in favor of a trial in the court of public opinion. I don't like that. But that being said, I'm always on the side of women fighting for their freedom.
It's not up to us artists to do justice. It's a complex moral question. If you ask for my personal opinion, I think it's dishonest to separate the man from the artist.
Interesting, we just heard that. Separating the man from the artist. This is coming up a lot in debates here in France, something I don't necessarily personally agree with.
It's our expression du jour, because you hear it all the time. Here's what it is. Séparer l'homme de l'artiste. It's usually a question, should we separate the man from the artist? It's kind of the question you would get on a high school philosophy exam. And it's come up a lot in the past about Woody Allen, but also authors like Céline, who is a celebrated author here in France, also quite an anti-Semite as well. Should we continue to read his work? Can we celebrate the artist? Should we essentially take into account his private life when we're looking at his or her artwork? Should art be treated as an entity in its own? It's all very complex. It's all very philosophical. It's a major topic. It's a very divisive topic. Now, interestingly, that actress I was telling you about, Adèle Haenel, in an interview following the award ceremony, she said they wanted to separate the man from the artist. Today, they're separating the artists from the people, and this is an opinion that's shared by many feminist groups.
We should separate the man from the artist, but that means nothing. It's the artist and the man that raped these children. And today it's the artist who's instrumentalizing. And this is even more serious, the Dreyfus Affair, to draw parallels with his own life. He's painting himself as a persecuted victim.
And polarizing it is, isn't it, Flo? Critics are saying the Best Director Award for Polanski, it highlights a very deep-rooted problem in French society.
Absolutely. Now, France has always taken pride in being a little bit different from other countries, particularly Anglo-Saxon countries, not being so Puritan, not being so moralizing, not being so politically correct, which is kind of a bad word here in France. This is true in the art world, and it's especially true in the elite world of French cinema. Like, we didn't really have our as big of an impact from the Me Too movement in the cinema world, fewer heads rolled, if you will. You might remember, in fact, that the actress Catherine Deneuve joined 100 female artists in signing a petition against Puritanism and in favor of the right to bother. And this really continues today. There's kind of a cult of the misunderstood artist who is fighting against the world. For instance, Polanski. Not only does he have refuge here because as a French citizen, France won't extradite their citizens, he is also celebrated and honored.
Recently, there have been a lot of revelations about sexual harassment, about gender discrimination in different worlds. It's not just cinema, it's ice skating, it's journalism, and of course in the intellectual world. Are things changing given that the mindset is what you've just described there?
Well, there do seem to be ripples of change. Talking about that actress again, Adèle Haenel, when she spoke out last year, she was the first high-profile actress to speak out as she did, and she has since said that France kind of missed the boat on the Me Too movement, but she has kind of sparked this second wave of the Me Too movement, of debates here in France. And in many ways, that's why this award for Polanski is such a cold shower, because for many people, it shows that actually, no, not that much has changed. We're still in a very patriarchal system here in France, a toxic culture that celebrates the untouchable artist. And the reason that people are upset is because it's not just about art and cinema. This is about French society in general. After all, France is a country where 1 in 10 women identify as rape victims, according to a recent study, and 75% of accusations of sexual harassment or violence are dropped without charge. So it's a really big societal deal. So there's a lot of work to be done. Does seem like there's some sort of a resistance that's growing, especially among younger generations, but it's a very emotional issue, and a lot of people don't really know how to position themselves because they don't want censorship, they don't want this pitchfork mob, and at the same time, they want to support victims and foster change, so we're still figuring it out.
So we will continue to debate this subject for years to come, I
Absolutely.
imagine. Flo Villemino, thank you very much for another very interesting episode of French Connections. Of course, you can follow all those stories on our website. That's www.france24.com.